Fernando Alonso's podium at the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix continued his and Aston Martin's remarkable start to the new Formula One season, as with back-to-back top three finishes, they have emerged from the winter as the surprise package of 2023 so far. But it's not just about Fernando's incredible driving or Aston's impressive form, it's about the fact that the results have allowed Fernando to join an exclusive club, of which only 5 other drivers are a part of. Fernando's on, off, then on again third place finish in Jeddah saw him achieve his 100th podium in Formula One, becoming just the 6th driver to reach that milestone. The list of drivers who have achieved 100 podiums in Formula One is pretty special. In fact, all of the drivers have 777 podiums between them, which equates to 71% of all the races run since the first ever Grand Prix back in 1950. So for this video, I thought it'd be really interesting to compare all of the 6 drivers to see where and when they scored their 100th podium and how long it took them to achieve this feat. So let's get into it. The first driver to reach the 100 podium mark in Formula One was Alain Prost when he won the 1993 French Grand Prix in his 191st Grand Prix start. By 1993, Prost was already the most successful Formula One driver of his generation. He already held the record for the most podiums and the most Grand Prix victories and was a 3-time world champion, and of course would go on to achieve his 4th that very season. Prost was driving for Williams at the time after spending 1992 on the sidelines, having been sacked by Ferrari at the end of 1991. In the all-conquering Williams FW15C, Prost was comfortably leading the World Championship as he arrived at Manicourt for the French Grand Prix, the 8th round of the season, but he wasn't able to secure pole in front of his home crowd as Williams teammate Damon Hill beat him in qualifying. But Prost got his own back in the race, leapfrogging Hill during the first round of pit stops, and that's where he would stay until the end of the Grand Prix, holding off Hill by just 0.3 of a second of a checkered flag to secure the 100th podium of his career. Prost would go on to score another 6 podiums before retiring at the end of the season, and his record for number of podiums would go unmatched for another 9 years before being beaten by the next driver on this list. And that driver is Michael Schumacher, who took his 100th podium at the 2002 Brazilian Grand Prix, his 163rd Grand Prix start, which is 28 fewer than it took Prost. 2002 is obviously best remembered for Ferrari and Michael's domination as they swept to both World Championships, with Michael taking a record-equaling 5th driver's title to draw him level with the great Juan Manuel Fangio. But unlike the majority of the races that season, in Brazil, Schumacher was really made to flex his muscles in order to gain a result, and that was a fact proven in qualifying when he was beat to the pole position by the BMW Williams of Juan Pablo Montoya by a 10th of a second. In the race, the pair would end up tangling on the first lap in a controversial incident when Schumacher chopped across the front of Montoya's car on the run down to turn 4, breaking the Colombian's front wing. But while that left Montoya out of contention, Schumacher was still made to work hard to win the race by his brother Ralph and the other BMW Williams, and he ended up winning by only half a second at the conclusion of the final lap. The victory and the podium in Brazil was just a small part of Schumacher's record-breaking season, as he won 11 Grand Prix out of the 17 and wrapped up the championship by July. And just 7 races after Brazil, Schumacher would of course go on to surpass Prost's podium record, setting his own benchmark tally of 155 podium finishes by the end of his career, the last of which came at the 2012 European Grand Prix while driving for Mercedes. But Schumacher's tally would eventually be beaten by the next driver on the list, which is of course Lewis Hamilton, who scored his 100th podium at the 2016 Japanese Grand Prix in his 184th Grand Prix start. By this stage of his career, Lewis was already a 3-time world champion, and during this season he fought Mercedes teammate Nico Rosberg for a 4th driver's title. The championship had swung in each other's favour during various points in the season, but going into Suzuka it was Rosberg who led the drivers' championship ahead of Hamilton by 23 points. The battle raged on in qualifying, with Rosberg taking pole by just 13 1,000ths of a second, leaving Hamilton second on the grid, and things wouldn't get much better in the race. A poor getaway would see Lewis slip down to 8th place by the end of the first lap, and would force him to fight his way back through the field, but he would only be able to recover to 3rd place by the end of the race as Rosberg took the victory. Despite the disappointment of the result and the fact that Lewis would end up losing the World Championship to Rosberg by the end of the season, Hamilton had still joined Prost and Schumacher as the only drivers at that point to have achieved 100 podium finishes. And by 2020, Hamilton has gone on to beat Schumacher's record for the number of top 3 finishes by a driver, and as we currently speak is sitting on 191 podium finishes, and who's to say that he won't become the first driver to reach the 200 mark by the end of his career. Next up we have Sebastian Vettel, who visited the podium for the 100th time at the 2018 Australian Grand Prix on his 199th Grand Prix start. Like the preceding three drivers, Vettel was a regular podium finisher, especially during the height of his career when he was winning his World Championships with Red Bull in the early 2010s. By 2018, Seb was now driving for Ferrari, but success had followed him to Maranello. And at the first race of the season in Australia, he was in search of that 100th podium. And although he would only qualify third for Sunday's race behind pole sitter Lewis Hamilton and his Ferrari teammate Kimi Raikkonen, Seb would still achieve the feat with a victory, as a perfectly timed virtual safety car allowed him to jump ahead of Hamilton and win the race. Vettel would go on to score another 22 podiums with Ferrari and with Aston Martin before bowing out of Formula 1 at the end of 2022. Which currently leaves him third in the all-time list, only behind Schumacher and Hamilton. So we now come to the most recent driver to join this list before Fernando, and that is Kimi Raikkonen, who scored his 100th podium at the 2018 Italian Grand Prix in his 284th Grand Prix start. Kimi is often overlooked when it comes to talking about the best drivers of his era, but the fact he is on this list speaks volumes, as he regularly battled for podiums over his career. During what was his second spell at Ferrari, Kimi entered the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, which was the 14th round of that season, in good form. He was lying third in the World Championship, and on the Saturday he would remarkably qualify on pole position in front of the adoring Tifosi. Raikkonen was embroiled in a race-long battle with Lewis Hamilton and would lead for much of the race, but would end up losing the lead to the Mercedes driver with just 9 laps to go. But he nevertheless came home in second place to claim that 100th podium finish. After scoring another 3 podiums at the end of 2018, Raikkonen would never stand on the rostrum in Formula 1 again, despite racing for another 3 years with the Sauber Alfa Romeo team. This means his last podium on record is the 2018 Brazilian Grand Prix, when he finished in third place. And so we find ourselves talking about Fernando Alonso as the latest member of this exclusive club, as he scored his 100th podium at the 2023 Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, which was his 357th Grand Prix start. Fernando's 100th podium in Formula 1 is long overdue, especially when you consider he was on 97 podiums in 2014. But a failed move to McLaren and then a 2-year break from Formula 1 meant that it took longer than anticipated. But after joining Aston Martin at the start of this season, Fernando is back at the sharp end of the grid and in the competitive car, scoring a podium in each of the first 2 races. But of course, it's the second one that we're going to be talking about because of its significance. Fernando qualified on the front row in Jeddah and even led the first 2 laps of the race. And although he wasn't able to stay there and had a 5-second time penalty in the race for a start line infringement, he still finished in third place. And of course, not forgetting the post-race confusion when he was given a time penalty for not serving that initial penalty correctly. But after Aston Martin successfully appealed, Alonso was reinstated and that 100th podium was his. You have to imagine that Aston Martin's amazing start to this season will only give Alonso more chances to add to his current tally, and who's to bet against him passing Raikkonen and Prost in the all-time list by the end of the year. And if Aston Martin remains competitive in future seasons, who's to say that Fernando won't continue racing and add more podiums to his name? In fact, let me know in the comments how many podiums you think Fernando Alonso will have by the end of his career. 100 podiums in Formula 1 is an amazing achievement, so it's probably no surprise to see that only 6 drivers have done it to this day. But it's likely that we'll see more drivers join that list in the future. Max Verstappen is the closest on the current grid to achieving this. He's currently on 79. So there we have it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.